So Marvel Rivals has been out for a minute now, and it's been an absolute hit. While there are plenty of things to talk about this game, I want to talk about character design specifically. I know in the last decade or so, there's been a push to make these characters more realistic to the general public. From the sketching/painting art style to the over-exaggerated portions that really put the super in superheroes, I think that Marvel Rivals straying away from realism and hyper-realism actually almost perfects the comic book and superhero aesthetic. I say almost because I can't say that all of these designs are masterpieces. The two that come to mind for me are Moon Knight and Wolverine. I wouldn't say Moon Knight's design is bad. I would go so far as to even say it's amazing. I just think that I would have preferred this design for classic Moon Knight. You know, less magical and mystical and more crazy dude hallucinating an ancient Egyptian deity. I always loved the version of Moon Knight where Mark Spector is kind of an unreliable narrator. Nowadays, Khonshu's existence has become less ambiguous. So having like this tactical white Batman suit while having moon powers kind of throws me off. I really don't hate it, honestly, and I might have just preferred if this was an altered skin. Wolverine, on the other hand, I don't like anything about this design. I don't like the jacket, I don't like the sneakers. This is one case where I think sticking to his classic comic book skin with the yellow and blue would have worked. And if they didn't want that, there's this illustration by Daniel Hurd that I think would have worked 1,000 times better. But besides those two, I think the designs are spot on. From minimal changes to complete overhauls, I feel like Marvel Rivals does more than just make these characters cooler versions of themselves. Forgive me for saying this, but aside from Wolverine, I firmly believe that these designs give a better understanding of who these characters are, better than the actual like mainline 616 comics. Heresy, I know. Aside from distancing itself from hyper-realism, the way these characters are redesigned perfectly complements the type of people they're supposed to be. Each character with a major redesign actually has some individuality, some more than others, but real quick, I want to talk about Hawkeye and Magneto. I feel like if you're only familiar with the MCU interpretation of Clint Barton, then you might see Rivals as like, oh, they're trying to make Hawkeye cool and stuff like that. Besides the MCU, I actually think that his classic comic book attire is also to blame as to why people have this like bland perception of him. Costume aside, Marvel's 616 is nothing like his movie counterpart. He's this antisocial and stubborn guy, and everyone kind of hates him. But it's not because like he's just a guy with a bow and arrow, it's because he's kind of a massive prick. When you're imagining a roguish archer with like anger issues and a big mouth, I feel like the Rivals design takes the cake. And with Magneto, he's actually the reason I wanted to make this video. Because despite how basic his redesign is, I actually think it's the best one. At least in terms of a one that really suits Magneto. I consider Eric's Brotherhood and Charles's X-Men as two sides of the same coin. Almost as if they represent the duality of man or the duality of mutant kind, to be more precise. Charles has always been kind of this diplomatic dreamer, while Eric's always been this radical, and both their designs should reflect that. And for the first time, I feel like Rivals actually does that for Eric. A survivor of the Holocaust and a victim who's seen the worst humanity has to offer, Eric's armor-clad design signifies a constant readiness for battle and combat. Unlike everyone's tactical yet clean gear, Magneto's look feels very war-torn and scratched up. He looks like the type of leader ready to die in the front lines, despite him being like the face of the cause. While his regal comic book design lines up with his aristocratic exterior, I feel like his in-game skin is more of an expression of his history and trauma. Another reason I love it is, like, if you know anything about Magneto, despite the fact that he can actually deflect almost anything, he still wears this armor. It's almost like an unconscious tell of how emotionally guarded and vulnerable he is. The man has one friend, and he ends up going to war with him for like decades. First, I thought the silver metallic design with only red accents for color made it pop less. However, as time went by, I started to really like it. The silver and the red actually screams like Magnet. It puts the Magnet in Magneto. I know that the full red is like a perfect contrast to the X-Men's blue and yellow, but I don't see Magneto as the ideological opposition to the X-Men. Plus, the red with the purple, it's not very subtle in terms of like telling us like he's a villain or the anti-villain. The metallic white with the red accents actually helps denote this aristocratic tendency while still being a radical. All of this works because despite drifting away from hyperrealism, the designs tell the story themselves. It's the simple rule of show don't tell. It's why this guy looks like an enhanced human and this one looks like some dude. Marvel Rivals wants to showcase these characters as larger than life, and that's exactly what it does. The stories and the lore that Marvel Rivals provides is actually reminiscent of the big comic book events. So these skins really preserve that element of fantasy. Games and comic books like these are meant to be escapism, so implementing a more grounded element can really constrain the imagination. This freedom to make characters over the top and exaggerated allows the visuals to be more striking and stimulating. Amazing designs with interesting lore coupled with a fantastic and distinct art style is what makes it stand out. This is also the reason why Arcane is one of, if not the greatest animated show of all time. Fantastical characters can still maintain realism if they have motivations that are understandable. I just read an article and saw a bunch of posts that Marvel Rivals actually got non-comic book readers into reading comic books. And as a fan of comic books, this is a win. I feel like the MCU pales in comparison in terms of storytelling and complexities. They're good adaptations, don't get me wrong, but they're not as layered as the 616 comics. I feel like newcomers getting into the comics will read all of these and actually get a better understanding of the heroes and villains that they made, and will actually see like how big of a difference these characters are from like the big screen to the comics. There's an argument to be made that some of these designs, specifically the females, are over-sexualized. While there is some merit to that, consumers are allowed to be attracted to like fictional characters, male or female, except for Penny Parker. If you were an adult who was attracted to this, don't touch yourself. Touch grass. I believe that the over-muscular and the unrealistic body standards work for superheroes and supervillains because, like I said, these characters are meant to be larger than life. They're what it means to be superhuman. Whatever your thoughts may be, I personally believe that Marvel Rivals has one of the best designs for Marvel characters that I've seen in years. Many have tried to drift away from hyperrealism, but the constraint of reality really holds back a proper adaptation. Maybe one day we'll have an Arcane level adaptation of Marvel Rivals, and that would be amazing. It would probably be the greatest comic book adaptation. Runner-up. Go watch Doom Patrol. Doom Patrol is the best. Go watch Doom Patrol. Anyway, that's all I have to say right now. If you like this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and share. I'm trying to do more of these. I'm trying to share my thoughts for comic books and stuff, and I hope you really like this. Have a good day.